Imagine a large corporation, a tower of glass and steel rising over the business district. That morning, like every other day, employees hurried in and out of the lobby, rushing with their badges, their impeccable suits, and their quick, purposeful steps. In the midst of all this agitation, a black woman sat quietly on a chair, just in front of the executive office. She wore a simple black skirt, a plain white blouse, and a pair of modest shoes that weren't meant to draw attention. Yet, despite her simple attire, there was in her posture a natural elegance, a dignity that could not go unnoticed. Her hands rested calmly on her knees, her eyes fixed on the wall clock. She seemed to be waiting patiently, showing no sign of impatience or nervousness. The employees passing by glanced at her sideways. Some gave her a polite smile, others frowned slightly. Soon, whispers began to circulate. A secretary murmured to her colleague, "She must be waiting for an interview, maybe a small assistant position." Another one snickered. "Look at her outfit. Too plain to impress anyone here." A manager walking past muttered, "This isn't the place to sit like that. She should have waited elsewhere." These words, whispered under their breath, reached the ears of a few curious onlookers, but the woman did not move. She sat upright, unshaken, as if all of this slid right off her. And yet, some began to watch her more closely. A new intern in the company stared at her with curiosity. She wondered, why does she look so calm, as if nothing could touch her? The contrast between the whispers and her silence was striking. Time went by. The sound of footsteps, the ringing of elevators, the distant phones in nearby offices created a background rhythm. The woman remained still, but her gaze carried a certainty no one else could understand. Then suddenly, an unexpected silence fell over the lobby. The heavy wooden door of the executive office swung open. All eyes turned immediately, and the man who walked out made backs straighten, conversations freeze, and fake smiles vanish. It was the CEO. A charismatic man, tall, elegant, dressed in a dark, perfectly tailored suit. His presence alone commanded respect. Employees lowered their heads slightly, some sitting up straighter, others nervously clutching their files, desperate to appear more professional. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. The CEO paused for a moment, scanned the room, and then his eyes rested on the woman in the skirt. At that instant, everyone wondered if he was going to ask her to leave, or perhaps question why she was there. But no. His face lit up with a genuine smile. He walked straight toward her, under the stunned gaze of his employees. When he reached her, he held out his hand and said warmly, "My love, I've been waiting for you." Before the astonished assembly, he helped her to her feet, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her tenderly. The lobby, usually noisy and filled with chatter, fell into a heavy silence. Not a word, not a breath. The employees, who had looked down on her only minutes earlier, were frozen in disbelief. Sensing the heavy silence, the CEO turned toward his staff, still holding his wife's hand. In a firm yet calm voice, he declared, "I want you all to learn a lesson today. This woman you see, with her simplicity and her dignity, is my wife. She is my support, my strength, and my inspiration. Without her, I would not be the man I am today." His eyes scanned the room, meeting the averted gazes, the faces flushed with shame. He went on, "Never judge a person by their appearance. Respect is not measured by the label on one's clothes or the sparkle of jewelry. The true value of a person is invisible to those who refuse to look deeper." At that moment, many felt a lump in their throats. The secretary who had mocked her outfit earlier lowered her eyes in shame. The manager who had scoffed at her presence felt his face burn. And the intern thought to herself that she had just received the greatest lesson of her life, never to judge too quickly, but always to look beyond appearances. The CEO then turned back to his wife, his tone softening with tenderness that contrasted with his usual authority. "You don't need any artifices to be the most beautiful in my eyes. Your humility is your greatness, and I am proud to walk by your side." His wife, who had not spoken a single word until then, smiled quietly. She had not needed to defend herself, nor to answer the whispers or the stares. Her simple truth, revealed by her husband, was enough to shatter every prejudice. In the days that followed, that moment became a story within the company. People whispered about it in the hallways, in meeting rooms, around the coffee machine. Some said, "Do you remember that day? I got chills." Others admitted, "It made me rethink the way I judge people." Gradually, a subtle but real change spread through the workplace. Looks became softer, judgments less harsh. People learned to greet the cleaning staff with more warmth, to respect the interns, to lend a hand instead of showing disdain. That scene, simple as it may have seemed, marked a turning point. All thanks to a woman in a skirt who remained silent, and to a CEO who had the courage to open his employees' eyes to a universal truth. The dignity and worth of a person never depend on what they wear, but on who they truly are. And that day, in that corporate lobby, everyone understood that humility, respect, and love are the finest garments one can wear, the ones that never wrinkle and shine far brighter than gold.